Good morning to all of you, and thank you so much for that kind introduction, Representative Sain. It was great having you. I look forward to having many of you others. Thank you, Lisa, for all you have done to establish this relationship and make it work. Because, you know, when you go to the CES, you get to see not only innovation in action, but you also get to see the free marketplace of ideas and products and everybody put together going back almost to the ancient markets. And you see competition, you see companies competing, and you see buyers coming and be able to compare one product with another. And you see innovation at its finest because the CES has become the mecca for the world. Over 4,000 companies exhibiting and over 2.7 million net square feet of exhibit space. No one has ever seen the entire event. There's over 1,200 speakers, there's keynoters, there's over 1/3 of the people that come are from outside the United States. That's over 60,000 people from outside the United States visiting us. And it is the world-dominant business event, the world-dominant innovation event, and it's the largest business gathering of any type of CXOs, CMOs, CIOs, CFOs, and those focused on strategy and innovation. And the reason that innovation is so important, frankly, is because it is defining who we are as a country. It's what we're really good at in the United States. And if you think about why we're good at it, we're good for a host of reasons. Number one, we're the most diverse country in the world. Number two, we're a nation of immigrants, so we always wanted something better. Number three, our fundamental give back to those that brought us here, our parents and grandparents and others, is that we're going to do something and make the world better. We're going to do something better. It's a cultural attitude that we could change things and do it better. Our kids ask questions about how things could do better. That doesn't happen in Asia, where there's rote learning and things like that. Also, we have a Constitution, which encourages innovation. We have a First Amendment, which allows us essentially to ask questions, to challenge the status quo, to petition our government, and to fight against the natural tendency of any business to try to abuse government to preserve their monopolies. So you have new entrants coming in all the time in a freer way than any other country in the world. And you also have a reward system that's set up so that it's not confiscatory of income that you make. So we have more billionaires here and millionaires in the US because they've created some amazing things that the market around the world has adopted. And it's not only about money, though. These innovations that we're seeing today and we're increasingly seeing in the future are changing fundamentally how we live, how we eat, how we work, how we play, and they're solving biggest problems we have. The problems of transportation will be solved by the self-driving cars and crash avoidance cars. The problems of food production, hunger, water. We have all sorts of things helping farmers out there. In fact, John Deere is exhibiting at CES because there are ways of using science, using artificial intelligence and deep data to solve these problems and gather information and go towards the future in a way which really ends hunger around the world. Same thing with healthcare. We are on the cusp, and we have a huge healthcare portion of our show, of taking information and solving maladies simply by gathering data and using it. There's robotics coming. We have a whole new area at the CES focused on resilience. Say what you want about whether you believe in climate change or not, but the fact is people are facing more challenges in terms of their environment. More things are happening. More people are wanting to deal locally. And even at our own show last year, I hate to admit it for those of you who were there, we actually had a power outage for 2 hours. And that incentivized, and then we had a board meeting in Napa Valley during the fires. We had a board meeting actually in the dark, cold coffee, no telephone service, and no electricity. And that's when I decided we have to focus on resilience and redundancy a little bit. So we have a whole new area focused on resilience. We have a whole business-to-business section of the event. And as I said, there's 4,400 companies. Now, as an association, we're a US-only association. We do define US, I will tell this group, as including Canada, because they're our friends to the north. So if you're a Canadian or US company, you're eligible to join. And everyone's united with a common view that innovation is important and solving problems. On the other hand, we're also entering a time period when there's a little bit of a techlash, there's concerns, but there's a battle going on. And it's a very important battle that's going to be played out in state houses and in Congress and across the world. And the battle is who is going to be the leader in the world with the next generation of technology. Without question, the US is the leader today of everything having to do with the internet, with 4G and hopefully 5G technology, the smaller little cells that will get us a lot more broadband service. But what will happen with this next battle? And my view of the world is that the battle is going to be between China and those who agree with their focus on social harmony and lack of rights. There's no other way of saying it. And those that are Americans and Europeans and Canadians and Australians and New Zealanders and others, and probably some in South America, who believe that in human rights, who believe that you have, as a human being, certain rights. You have a right to freely exercise a religion, a right to speak your mind, a First Amendment right, a right to access the internet, a right even to marry who you want, all these different rights in a bowl of rights we call liberty, which is what a lot of us came here for through our ancestors. And that is going to be a battle for the hearts and minds of the world. And it's going to be fought out in different ways. And it's going to be fought out over artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is the next wave of the future. It is the one which will be determined so many things, because we know now we could gather enormous amounts of data, we could analyze the data, we could solve problems, human problems and business problems. And whoever wins that artificial intelligence battle is going to be the one that does very well. Now, right now, honestly, the US is winning. But China has the ingredients to win, and they're going at it quicker and smarter than we are. First of all, they're training 1 million engineers and scientists every year. They're getting a huge numbers of people. They said, this is our priority, artificial intelligence. And they have 4 billion people or so. I'm sorry, they have 1.7 billion people. Europe has about 500 million. We have 330 million. They have more than double the size of Europe and us put together. And they all speak one language in China. It's Mandarin, although there's some Cantonese, but it's basically Mandarin. And they have no privacy. There is no such thing as privacy in China. In fact, increasingly, there's social ratings of individuals based on things they do, whether they cross the street and jaywalk, a camera flips them, recognizes their face, what they see and go to on the internet, what they do, what they chat about. They're being scored increasingly, and that determines whether they're allowed to travel, what hotel room they stay in. They get a social rating. These guys, I could see by the look in your face, this is a thing that's anathema to the US. We believe in freedom and liberty. But for where you want to go in terms of artificial intelligence and gathering data, they have no restrictions. Then you take Europe. Europe passed this legislation, and it's now a law that affects all of us, called GDPR, which basically says if you're contacting people, you have to have their permission, you have to be transparent, you can't bother them with things, which sounds very desirable, but it's screwed up business around the world in a big way. And it's very difficult. California, sadly, seems to be going in the same direction, although trying to make it worse by adding a private right of action for lawyers so they could sue anyone they want and disrupt business and put a new business tax on everyone. But the way I've looked at it is that China, it's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. China, the bowl's too hot. Europe is too cold. Our challenge in Europe is to keep doing what we're doing and having a balance between human rights and a balance between innovation and advancement, which will advance the common good. Because if I asked you starting out right now, do you own your own data, you would tell me, of course I own my own data. And I'd say, really? Should you own your own data when you're driving your car in a winter environment and there's a car in front of you and you know that car is going to a freezing area just based on the temperature of its windshield wipers or the outside of the car? Should that be private data? You'd probably say no. How about that car, this will distinguish the North from the South, that car in front of you goes over a pothole, and a huge pothole that could ruin your tire. Do you want to know that? Should that be private data? The answer is probably no. I'll go even further. I'll say you don't even always want to own your own medical data. What if that car that went over the pothole is going along fast on a highway and comes into a foggy snow blizzard area and hits the truck in front of it, or hits the truck in front of it, and there's a 30-car chain reaction collision. Cars and trucks are everywhere. Bodies are everywhere. What happens? Should you own your data, your medical data? You're stuck in that car accident. You may be alive. How is someone going to know that, the first responder? We're at a point now where cars can have sensing devices in them which could indicate your vital measurements. And if a first responder can know who's dead and who's alive and what their vitals are, we can save lives. So I think the thing is to remember, and what we've been really good at in the United States, is the law is not stupid. There's a balancing act out there. There's a balance between human life and human safety and protection versus privacy. We see it when we go through the airport, as most of you have flown to get there. You're giving up privacy to ensure that your safety and health is there because to fight against terrorism. We may not like it that we have that trade-off, but we do it. And going forward, I think we have to have this dialogue about the exchange between privacy and human life. With the context, it's not only about that, but it's also about winning this global economic war, not only for money and dollars in the economy in terms of who will be best at artificial intelligence, but whose worldview is going to prevail as China is out there with their Belt and Roads Initiative going to over 80 countries, giving them money, investing money in them, and the US is pulling back. So my view of the world, for what it's worth, is that we have to be very smart in how we go forward. Our special sauce as a nation has been innovation. We have been the best at it because we are the most creative for the reasons I indicated before. But we always have to be conscious of it, and we have to look at everything you do as a legislator. Is this going to be good for our kids and the future and innovation, or are we going to restrict because we're protecting Joe's taxi cab service and not letting Uber and Lyft around? In fact, we're so passionate about it that what we did is we created something called the scorecard, where we rank all of your states by how innovation friendly you are. We use criteria that are admittedly we created. We're transparent about it. A lot of them are third party. Do you have fast internet speed? Do you have STEM degrees? Do you have a tech workforce? Is it flexible? Do you have card check or not? If you have card check, you don't have a flexible workforce. Are you a right to work state? If you have a right to work, I mean, you go that's digital, that criteria. Are you tax friendly? The way Florida is definitely tax friendly, and Texas and a few others. Do you allow new services like self-driving cars, home sharing, car sharing, Uber and Lyft, drones? Do you allow all those things? And so we look at all these. It's very transparent. Could you hold up that book, The Innovation Scorecard, Walter? It's available. It's on our website. You can see how you do compared to any other state. We divide you into 4 tiers, whether you're a champion or you're struggling to get up there. And by the way, those of you who think California is the coolest, best state in the country, it's not. They're not even in our first quartile. Why? They have a lot of horrible rules. They have a lot of horrible taxes. It's a very business-unfriendly place. And let's be honest, it costs a lot to live there. So there are other states that do very well. We started to do the same thing now with countries. I was just 2 nights ago at the Finnish embassy. Finland ended up being our #1 country in the world. We have different criteria for them because we have our own constitution that affects all our states. But for the global scoring, we look at things. Do you have clean air and clean water? Do you know that the US has the cleanest air and clean water in the world next to Finland? And China's at the very bottom. So that's, we think China's doing so well. What does that have to do with innovation? Well, you can't live and think, if you're dying, as most people are. The #1 cause of death in China is lung cancer right now because the air is so terrible. Also, do you allow freedoms and liberty? Again, China gets the lowest score possible. We get the highest score. This is a very American-centric view of the world we're pushing out there. A lot of them get it. I go to China frequently. We have an event there. I'm sure I'll be arrested someday. But right now, we're pushing something which we consider very, very important. And in terms of policy, the other thing that we think is very important, we've done some great things. We've gotten rid of a lot of bad regulations. We have a very pro-business friendly environment. Taxes are going down. But we've gone in an absolutely wrong direction in one area that concerns us greatly. And the last time we did something this stupid, where Congress exercised this legal authority under the Constitution, Congress has the power to tax, was in 1930, and Congress passed, it was by all historical accounts, one of the worst pieces of legislation ever. It was called Smoot-Hawley. It was opposed by almost every economist in the country. Over 1,000 wrote a letter. It was at the cover of newspapers everywhere. But the president signed it, and it was after some stock market volatility and concerns, and Congress imposed high tariffs. Those tariffs led to a trade war. It led to the Great Depression. It spread the Great Depression out almost till World War II, saved us in the 40s. And by all measures of history, it was a bad decision. Nothing was worse until this year when we did it again. Along the way, Congress gradually gave a little bit of its authority under the United States Constitution to tax or to put tariffs on to the executive branch. And it said, for national security purposes, you can do this. And President Trump exercised that authority to put steel tariffs on. says, or if there's a finding of unfair business practice and harm, you could do this. And President Trump correctly, and legally, I don't know if correctly, exercises authority to put some tariffs on some products. But then what happened was that the Chinese retaliated. So then Trump retaliated, and then the Chinese retaliated. And now we are on the cusp, within 32 days or so, of a tariff of 25% going on several $100 billion worth of products from China, which is affecting not only thousands of American companies that are in technology, but also our farmers and others as China is retaliating. And what the President Trump has done, he's taken authority that he does not have under the law, and he's put these tariffs on. And we see the retaliation to occur. I travel around the world. I talk to government leaders. This is just not a China-U.S. issue. Every developed country in the world is concerned about this tariff war, which can not only lead us into a recession, but potentially depression. So to me, we are going against our brand of freedom and welcoming in. China is clearly not a fair player, by the way. We have a business venture there. It is very difficult, but raising tariffs, in our view, is not the way. If you share my views on that, the importance of our innovation struggles, it's very important you let the White House know about it. You are influential there. You are the voice, in a sense, to people that can get there, so I urge you to act on it. And I mean, the other thing, they're trying to isolate us as a country, which is not a great strategy because we are a trading country. A lot of our technology is designed here, imported with components from one country, comes somewhere else, and that's how it works. And then, of course, what we have to do to proceed and to move along is we have to have partners around to do these things around the world. And if we isolate the U.S., we will take a major step backwards. It'll be reflected. It'll be a tough time. We know we're heading towards a recession in the next 2 or 3 years at the most. We don't want that recession to be a depression. The business cycle is not over because President Trump is in office or because President Obama kept us going for a while. It's not even a matter of the presidents. This is sheer economics. There is a business cycle in capitalism. Our job is to make it as least harmful as possible, and tariffs will make it the most harmful. So tariffs are taxes, and we have to fight them. I appreciate you listening. Innovation, to me, is our national strategy. I hope you adjust your states so you are innovation champions, all of you. Thank you very much.